Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's with great pleasure to welcome you to the plenary session of the SIP 2019. Thank you all for being here, and we are here in Brussels, the center of the political EU. And this is exactly the right place to be if SIP is calling on the European Commission and the member states to join forces for one goal: to reduce the societal impact of pain. My name is Michael von Fizen. I'll be your anchor man during this symposium. Today, we will focus in interactive sessions on the 4 pillars of the SIP joint statement: education, research, employment, and indicators. And I would like to encourage you to participate in the discussion and to share your opinion. There are 2 ways to do it. First of all, that's very simple. Raise your hands and speak up. Very easy. Then we have another cool tool called Swarmworks, and you see these iPads on the table, and you can vote individually or unanimously as a team at your table. How does this work? And let's just give a first example. Maybe we have the first here. What's your level of energy? And you find this question now on the iPads. Sonja, it's not on the iPad? Or now you have it. Please, make your vote. Start with the first one. Make your vote. This is my vote. You click on OK, and then you pass it on to the next participant. Please do it now for the next 15 seconds. Do it quickly so you get used to the system. Make your vote, click yes and OK, and pass it on to the next participant. All done? All done. Then let's have a look. Aha. Wow, that's good. That's almost 70%. The energy level is pretty good, and it's still changing. But now we can also create a word cloud live here now. And that's our next task. What are your expectations regarding the SIP symposium? Please put in one word, and then you tap on the pencil, put in the word, and then you pass it on. Do it, please, right now. Pencil, your one word expectation. Tick OK, tick OK. Next one. And by the way, if you need help, Sonja here from Swarmworks, she will come and help you. And the cool thing here is, while you put in the words, the word cloud will change. And the charming thing is, the bigger the word, the more people typed in this word. Good. So we see there's a trend. We have inspiration, education, learning, very important within this group, and good ideas this is what you expect from this SIP symposium. All right, so we have 4 leading expectations: education, learning, inspiration, and ideas, amongst many others. Now, I said you can also ask a question or post a comment. How do you do this? And then we turn to the next tool. So, for example, you tick the pencil, you type in my question, or your question, of course, what it is, and you say, you tick it off, then everybody sees this question. If you like it, and you think this is a cool and a very good question, you just like it and press your finger on that question and it appears blue, then it's liked. Now, the point is, the more liked questions we have, the more these questions will be, the most liked questions will be answered in a Q&A session afterwards when we have enough time. Every question will be saved and we can work, and the SIP team can work on it. Is that clear, the system? Now it's getting even better, because some question you will get as a team at your table. And these questions are indicated with a trophy. We have a quiz during the whole day. Some questions are quiz questions. And your teams, each table is a team, and you have to find a unanimous vote, and for each right answer you get points. And let's see who will be the winner this afternoon of the SIP Symposium as far as this quiz is concerned. So every time you see this trophy, it means it's a team question. Now, you have to give your team a name, and you do that in the next few seconds. Please type in an individual name of your team, your table, and then we know which team will win. Done? All done? No team name? Jean-Christophe. 20 characters. Okay. May I have your attention, please, again? This year is a very special year because the SIP platform is celebrating its 10th anniversary. And it says, applause from the audience on my card. And within these 10 years, SIP moved and achieved a lot. We will hear about the achievements in a few minutes. We will hear more about the achievements in a few minutes. But now, for the first session, I would like to introduce you to my co-moderator. And I'm delighted to introduce you to the president of the WIP. Please welcome Giustino Varassi. Oh, you need a microphone here. Oh, you can stay here. Giustino, 10 years of SIP. I know you for many more years. Let me ask you a quick question. How was it when you organized the first SIP back in 2009? Was it cumbersome, and what was the driving factor? Why did we start, or did you start that?
Long discussion. Good morning, everybody. First of all, it's a real, genuine pleasure to be here with so many friends. Related to your question, it was a genuine and a real big pleasure because it was very exciting. The idea to establish a network with many colleagues and friends all around the world that were interested in pain management at that time and that were discussing the importance of the societal impact of pain were definitely very exciting. And also, we were actually looking after the possibility to have a even wider network. And it was possible thanks to the generous support of Grunenthal at that time, and also the cooperation with people and close friends like Norbert van Rooij, for example, and many others. And this was the beginning of something that is really enthusiasmatic to me, because to see so many people here, to see what is the interest of important organizations like Active Citizenship Network and many others. I don't want to mention all of them because it would be practically impossible. But I still remember for the first edition we got around 200 endorsements. That was a real surprise for us because there was a so huge enthusiasm from everybody that was really very, very surprising.
And it also reflects the need that everybody
Yes,
saw. There's
definitely.
need, and someone took the initiative to fill this gap.
You are completely right. This was coming, the importance of this topic was coming a little bit more before, because I still remember the first meeting we had in the European Parliament with the Federation of ISP Chapters. That was in 1999 with Madame Grostet, that was one of the MEPs from France. And she was hosting us in the European Parliament for the first meeting on pain in the European Parliament, when we were talking about the burden of chronic pain. And 2 years later, and this is very important because I am very admired of the success that ISP has obtained recently to introduce in the ICD-11 the chronic pain. We started to discuss about this in 2001, again in the European Parliament, again hosted by Madame Grostet. And this was a very important moment because for the first time, with the document presented by EFIC, chronic pain was defined as a disease in its own right. You can find the link in the website of EFIC. I'm very proud of that because it means that we have obtained something.
And it also means with resilience and endurance, we can really move a lot, also and first and foremost for the patients living in chronic pain.
Exactly. And it's enthusiastic to see how many people are willing to join this initiative and to work together, because this is the only secret we can have. If we work together, we can obtain much more, no doubt about.
So let's go back to the future. And what's the objective of the SIP 2019?
Well, the objective is, of course, to implement the initiative that SIP has started last year. This should be implemented much more, and especially the thematic network, and you have just spoken about that. But also there is the importance of strengthening the SIP platform at the national level, which is also very, very important to me. Because again, to work together is always more enthusiastic than to be alone and to repeat the same slogan all the time. So it's important, and this cross-pollution is very interesting because you get many cultural inputs and many potentialities, and you increase the knowledge. So to work together again is extremely important and interesting.
And there are 4 partners, and I think we should like to invite them on stage and to give their welcome words.
Of course, it's the SIP is, as we said, a joint initiative, but at the moment is mainly chaired by 4 groups. And the first one is definitely EFIC, that has started this initiative, and it is my pleasure to invite my friend Bart Morlion, the president of EFIC.
From president to president. Yes, and you can please applaud. Just take a seat.
Welcome, Bart.
And
Then, of course, it's my pleasure to invite Lisa Utila, the Vice President of the Patient Alliance Europe, which
Yes.
was... Welcome, Lisa. This was another important initiative started at the beginning, at the very beginning, with this group of patient organizations that was very important. And the third, my friend Mariano Votta, which is the director of the Citizenship Network. He has succeeded, as we have seen yesterday, he has succeeded in establishing a real, strong network here in Brussels. And last but not least, of course, I would welcome the Chief of Commercial Officer, Mark Fladrich, which is our supporter.
Supporter, right. Welcome, Mark. And
welcome, Mark.
I just heard before we start with your welcome words, let's watch a video on 10 years of SIP. Watch this. And the partners are here live and in person. And Bart, maybe you start with your first words of welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Justino, for this kind introduction. And so, for those who do not know me, my name is Bart Morlion. I'm the president of the European Pain Federation, EFIC. While Justino started 10 years ago, we changed our name from EFIC to European Pain Federation. I want to stress this, and now it's much clearer. And I want to welcome you also on behalf of the complete executive board of the European Pain Federation and our professional staff, because we really developed a very professional organization. And I want to stress that we really are, you see it behind me on this slide, that we are a platform. We are now in Brussels. Brussels is the capital of Belgium, but also a capital of EU institutions. And united we stand. That's the motto of Belgium. L'union fait la force, Eendracht maakt macht. And that's a very nice example that this has been implemented also in this extremely well organized initiative, the Societal Impact of Pain. And SIP has been a pioneer project for the European Pain Federation in a collaborative and cooperative approach. Speaking with one voice is so important, and as indicated by Justino already, it brings our force. Over 340 endorsing organizations means a lot, and I'm very proud that I see a lot of faces here who were also present 10 years ago when we had our first meeting in Brussels. And personally, I'm also very proud that I could be part of this from the beginning, in another role, but growing into this role. And therefore, we need to thank, as a federation, also our past presidents who really put their shoulders under this project in the further collaboration with all our partners, Justino Varassi, Hans Kress, Chris Wells, and I'm very sure that also the president-elect of the European Pain Federation, Brona Fallon, will also put her shoulders on continuation of this project. And by the way, we are really an organization on the move, because I'm very proud that for the first time we will have a lady president in the European Pain Federation after so many men. And it's also it's really an honor that we also will have a non-physician leading the European Pain Federation, reflecting also the multi-professional character of our organization. The proof is in the pudding. 10 years continuity is the proof of its strength and impact. And it proves the strong coherence within the group of stakeholders. And I really want to thank the collaboration with Pain Alliance Europe, Active Citizenship Network, and of course also the very generous support of Gruntal making this possible. And over the 10 years, of course, one of the figures which was, who was always present with a little gap in Austria, but that was Norbert van Rooij. And so speaking with one voice is our strength. Moreover, this endorsement, 340 and still new organizations are joining our initiatives. During the first 8 years of the initiatives, it was really focused on a European perspective. And we addressed and we had many visits, and at a certain stage I was very intensively involved also in these many visits to policymakers, to MEPs, to people from the Council, from the Commission, and so on and so forth. But at a certain stage, it was important to translate this on a national level, because you know that healthcare is something which is organized on a national level and not on an EU level. So the hooks we found to get influence also in the policy making on a European level needed to be reflected on a national level. And I'm very proud that in 2017 we could actually start with the national initiatives. And during this Jubilee Day, you will hear and you can find posters of all these national initiatives, because translating this into real-world policy which makes a difference for the patients, in our structure within Europe, we need to head also to the the membership states. And that doesn't mean that we want to restrain our efforts toward EU member countries. Of course, the European Pain Federation represents 37 countries, which is far more than the 28/27 EU is having now. During the sessions, many people from the national SIP initiatives will share their experiences. And meanwhile, we stayed active on a European level, because it's important that these efforts continued. And so the Malta meeting was a very important meeting, because it really gave a U-turn into the strength of our actions. And it led also, and you will hear more about this, to the SIP joint statement on the EU health care platform. And this was, there was input from many organizations, many people collaborated with the stakeholders, and over 100 organizations endorsed this. So while we can be proud of the achievements today, the need for political support is further needed. So it doesn't stop here after 10 years. The next decade of pain policies need to adapt to changing health systems and the way that we live our lives. And that's a nice bridge to that we also should think about other initiatives. And for instance, with the European Pain Federation, we really are turning our advocacy work on a professional level towards giving more attention to the prevention of pain. Of course, it's not only about treating, managing, and also the healthcare systems for patients with chronic pain. We also have the duty to think about how can we prevent the increasing numbers of chronic pain patients. And one of the examples is on the MOVE campaign, and you will find some leaflets outside. We want to stress physical activity and movement in the primary and secondary, but also even in the tertiary prevention of healthcare. So from my part, I will not be cross with you if you stand up, have a walk, and then stretch your legs, because this is not a very good example for being on the move, sitting here for a whole day. There will be breaks, there will be a long lunch pause, and this will give you the opportunity to stretch your legs. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I want to hand over, wish you a very good and constructive and learning environment during this day here in Brussels. I hope that you will get home. I learned that Lufthansa is striking, so no flights with Lufthansa from Brussels today. But you can enjoy then Brussels for another 2 days. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Next in the row is Lisa Jutila from Pain Alliance Europe.
Then it's him, and then it's you.
Good morning, everybody. Since 2011, associations, now members of Pain Alliance, have been active within SIP. Pain Alliance President Joop gave first presentation at the SIP Symposium of 2011 in the European Parliament. From the beginning, Pain Alliance have been involved in the SIP meetings one way or another. We always felt that our presence has added value. So did the SIP partners when we become a cooperating partner. Of course, all the parties have their own agenda and decide on their own priorities. However, there was never a point of discussion whether SIP was something that Pain Alliance should team up. Yes. The focus area was very clear, on the same line with Pain Alliance mission, improving the quality of life with people living with chronic pain in Europe, being a voice of people with chronic pain. During the years, as partners has grown, we have grown, EFIC has grown, and ACN, of course. We have learned how to respect each other. We have learned from each other. We have learned focus the ultimate goal, ensure that people with pain, chronic pain, can get the support they need to live their life according to their wishes and their possibilities. We also learned that we can't reach the goal overnight. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of patience, a lot of email traffic, a lot of phone calls, a lot of visits. We have to deal with disappointments, with ignorance, with restrictions, with stigmatized approaches. And of course, it takes a lot of energy and willpower. But it paid off as we had results. We are still making progress. In the course of the day, you will hear more about that. We keep working to reach the ultimate goal. From the future, consult my crystal ball, I see a platform that has grown in endorsers, grown in supporters, grown in having influence of health, social and economic politics. I also foresee that we will have developed a European-wide accepted indications for limitations that come with chronic pain. Not only because this is something we wished for, but there is a health and economic reason for this. There's a social reason for this. There's an employment reason for this. There's a research reason for this. There's a European-wide economic reason for this. In the far, far future, I see that ultimately the SIP platform will have done its work in a remarkable way, ensuring that everyone with chronic pain has the possibility to receive in accessible, affordable way any kind of support, help him or her to overcome chronic pain, or to manage it in such a way that it is able to have a meaningful life. Thank you for support. Thank you for your support in the past, the present, and the future. Thank you for allowing me to be a small part of this wonderful platform. Have a great symposium.
Very much. Lisa, Jutila, and let's turn to the next speaker. Put your hands together for Mark Frederick, CCO from Grünenthal.
Thank you very much. As Michael has introduced me, I'm Mark Fladrick, Chief Commercial Officer with Grünenthal. I've been with the company for just over 2 years, and this is really a great privilege to be here to celebrate 10 years of SIP. Grünenthal, as you know, is a global leader in pain management and related diseases. As a science-based, privately owned pharmaceutical company, we have a long track record of delivering innovative treatments and state-of-the-art technologies to patients worldwide. Our purpose is to change life for the better. Innovation is our passion. We are focusing all of our activities and efforts on moving towards a world free of pain. 10 years of SIP is an achievement really to celebrate. The SIP platform is an outstanding initiative where patient representatives, healthcare professionals, politicians, insurance companies, health authorities, regulators, and budget holders work together in a structured way. Indeed, it would be very difficult to look back and reflect of where pain management would be in Europe without SIP over the last 10 years. The progress that's been made in raising awareness, changing policies, helping better disease diagnosis and better treatment across Europe's member states is incredibly impressive. The SIP joint statement, developed last year under the auspices of the European Commission, offers a great opportunity for European Union member states to ensure effective action in the future by implementing the policy recommendations related to health quality indicators, research, employment, and education. It's also very encouraging to see that the ICD-11 initiative from the World Health Organization also captures chronic pain in 11 new indications, which will really help properly diagnose, document, and monitor the management of pain patients when the ICD-11 is executed over the next few years. On behalf of Grünenthal, I'd also like to thank everyone who's been involved in preparations for this exciting event, particularly our partners, the European Pain Federation, Pain Alliance Europe, Active Citizen Network, as well as many supporting and endorsing organisations. But most of all, I'd like to thank all of the participants in the SIP platform's activities for your effort and dedication in addressing the societal impact of pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And now, please welcome again Mariano Wotta from Active Citizenship Network.
Good morning and welcome also from my side. Thanks, Giustino, for the nice introduction. It is probably its 5th participation of Cittadinanza Attiva Active Citizenship Network in the SIP Symposium. As you probably know, our commitment in the area of pain is strictly linked with one of the principles stated in the European Charter on Patient Rights, that is a milestone to advocate on health issues at European national level based on the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. It was drafted in 2002 by Active Citizenship Network together with many associations. Even if no one of us were only focused on pain, the high sensitive about the respect of the person allowed us to state, among the others, the patient right to avoid unnecessary suffering and pain as follows. Each individual has the right to avoid as much suffering and pain as possible in each phase of his or her illness. Over the years, altogether, we are contributing to enrich the constituency of the advocacy groups across Europe active on the topic. And today, it's really a pleasure to see in the panel of this annual symposium some advocacy group that 18 years ago were not still born or not involved at all in the area of pain. Altogether, we have also contributed to increase the commitment of the European institutions on the issues. According to me, the last European Council, Parliament and Commission has been probably the institutions that in the history of the European Union have shown with facts to be more attentive to the needs of the European citizen suffering from chronic pain. And this attention represents an important heritage for the new European institutions that are called to give continuity and hopefully to improve on what their predecessors have done. Without any doubt, much of what has been achieved is due to the great work done with transparency and respect of the institutions by the societal impact of pain. According to me, the decision taken years ago to officially involve patients and citizens in the process represented the sliding doors of the development of SIP. As always, expectations are increased with respect to any successful initiative, as this is. After achieving a goal, there are many others to be achieved, and about it we will talk today. For sure, is still valid the message underlined during the Italian presidency of the Council of the European Union in 2014. It is of fundamental importance to guarantee access to pain therapy, to reduce the existing inequalities in healthcare between regions and member states of the European Union in the area of equal rights to health. The wish that I addressed to the SIP on the eve of this 10th birthday is to continue with renewed enthusiasm in its commitment that led the founders, Grunenthal and Efik, to establish it in 2009. A commitment that can be translated as working towards the respect and patient right to avoid pain. A commitment that recognizes the key role of the civic society as a whole, totally in line with the message widespread in occasion of the informal Council of the European Health Ministry in 2014. It's important to remember, we can read it in the official document, the contribution of non-profit associations toward the development of and growth of palliative culture and the promotion of initiatives to strengthen and support civic organizations in their work to help patients suffering from pain and patients requiring palliative care. It's vital that patients are aware of their rights and able to make informed choices. I wish you a fruitful symposium. Bye.
Thank you very much, and you can continue the applause for the four partners, Bart, Lisa, Mariano, and Mark. Thank you very much for this session. Let's turn to the next session. And let me first introduce my co-moderator. She joined the EVNA board in 2012. Now she is president of the European Federation of Neurological Association, EVNA. And here is Joke Jasma. Welcome, Joke. Oh, you need a microphone, or you can also take a handheld if you want. This one, the red one. Well, a saying says, action speaks louder than word, and we need surveys to implement to see whether we can, what has been implemented or where are gaps. I have a first question for you now, before we start the session. It will work. First question. Can we have the first question, please? How many national or regional action plans against pain have been launched? And this is a group response, so you have to find the right answer. And this is the first quiz question, by the way. Please make your vote. No, they do. All right. Can we see the results, please? And we are waiting, and here they are. And 40% was right. So here are the first points go to the groups, or the teams, which typed in 40%. Okay, here's the next one, the next question. How many countries have a law or legally binding regulation specific to pain management and pain treatment in place? Also a group response. Please vote now or find your unanimous answer and then type it in. Then you take over. I will. All right. How's it going? It needs a little bit courage to do it. Be brave. And here is the answer. Let's see. And the answer 5 was right. So everybody, each team who answered 5 gets the point. All right. For this session, I would like to call up on stage Vittoria Carraro, Paul Cameron, and Deirdre Ryan. Please come up on stage with your applause, of course. That helps a lot.
Okay, so we will kick off this session with the External Relations Director from the European Pain Federation, EFIC. She is responsible for managing the European Federation advocacy, communication and relations with external stakeholders. In her presentation today, she will focus on methods. May I introduce Vittoria Carrero.
Okay, I will use this one then. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I have no conflict of interest to disclose. And what I'm going to talk about to you today is a survey that we run with the SIP partner to find out what are the policies that are interesting for us today and really the focus where we should improve action for pain management and pain policies in general. First, a little bit of background on this survey. We have run national plan survey already in 2014 and 2016. All came from the initial roadmap that we have created in 2011, and we try to track progress against it. The amend that we did for this survey is that we included, and we tweaked it a little bit to really ask questions about pain indicators, pain education, research, and pain and employment, which are, as you will see in the session, the policy areas where we are focusing. A little bit about the methodology before I go into the responders to the survey. This has been created and analyzed by the members of the SIP platform. So I am on stage with me, the team that supported this effort, Deja Ryan and Paul Cameron and Gudel Peterson as well, who's behind there, supported the analysis of the results. We first ran a test pilot in Spain to understand the feasibility of the question, if they were clear or not, and then we deployed the survey more broadly to all of our community. And it's quite encouraging that the responders really reflect the core of the SIP partnership. So we do have the stakeholders that we need the most to be part of this analysis. We had responses from 55 individuals from 25 countries, and the highest rate of response is from Germany, UK, and Spain. Without further ado, I will leave it to my colleague Paul Cameron, who's going to talk about some of the policies that we analyzed through the survey.
Thank you, Victoria. And let me introduce you to Paul Cameron. He is a specialty advisor for pain to the Chief Medical Office in Scotland, and he's engaged in developing quality performance indicators for the treatment of chronic pain. Cameron.
Thank you.
Paul, sorry.
Thank you. I always start my talks with a health warning. I have a very strong Scottish accent, and if you try too hard to understand me, you're going to hurt yourself. So, obviously this has to be taken on to the background. This is a survey looking at building on previous past surveys done by SIP with EFIC. Because it is important to understand exactly where people are in different countries. It's difficult to get the information. It's also difficult to know who to ask for the information, because often some people just don't know the answer. Some of the questions that we asked reflect that, I think, and there's further analysis to be done in the survey results, and this is a quick snapshot. So I'm just going to take a few minutes just to present a couple of different points and then pass over to Deirdre, who will carry on. So just in terms of disclosures, my disclosures. So one of the things we wanted to look at was quality indicators in pain. But in order to get quality indicators, you really need to have a national plan. So we did cover this as one of the questions before. There was 25 different countries responded, of which 15 had a national plan. We don't have the details of those national plans, and we need to understand what those national plans look like and exactly what is being asked of them, and how do they fit into the recommendations that SIP would like to have. Interestingly, though, it does highlight the number of countries that don't have a national plan. Again, we don't understand, do we know if they want to have a national plan? Is there any impetus to have a national plan? Are they halfway through trying to get a national plan? Or indeed, are there individuals that we're unaware of that are steps forward that we don't know about, and we need to get in contact with these individuals and find out more? Again, we also want to know, in terms of chronic pain outcomes, what is being measured? And is it on a national or regional standard? And what is available? So a lot of people, as you'll see here, have standards to measure. They are looking at pain intensity and frequency. They're looking at quality of life outcomes. However, in only 4 countries is there a way to actually gather that data, and I think we all know, those of us that work in clinics and hospitals, we always gather data, we collect a lot of it, but most of the time it sits on a shelf or takes up space on a hard drive and no one has time to do anything with it. So I suspect there's a lot of data out there that can be utilised, but it's trying to get the national plan to work with this, to look at the national data and compile it all together. In Scotland, for example, one of the projects we're working on is having a national core data set, so everyone's collecting the same thing, and it's being collected nationally, so we all understand the position as it moves on in terms of patient care. This is, sorry. In terms of the ICD and ICF, now this is very new for some, ICF not being new, but not being well and widely used, I don't think. In terms of is it being implemented in other countries, as you can see here, 53% have no idea. Again, there's a bit of a marketing campaign required here. So while the World Health Organization has approved this, well, you would think that would be enough, but it's clearly not. So a lot of work needs to go into that to try and improve the situation here. And I think we have a role to play here, but so do our politicians. In terms of education, now I know there's another symposium on this later, so I won't go into depth here. It's really just asking, in the surveyed countries, how many had the basics of pain management introduced at education level, and that would be undergraduate and postgraduate actually. So in a third of the surveyed countries it was introduced, but that's 2/3 where there's no pain education at all or it's really unknown. And again, not a great situation, no standardization and much more work needing to be done. Very useful to know, but of course behind the survey there needs to be actions to change it. And lastly, for me, what is available for patients? Is there pain education programs? Can they access them? What does it involve? And unfortunately, that was one of the ones where there really wasn't a lot known. And what more did we learn from the comments provided? Very small pockets of education out there. Nothing consistent again. Quality control is a problem. Some people spring up with a pain education program for patients that has not been quality checked or sense checked at all. Often this is a for-profit. So again, understanding what is being taught, who it's being taught by, where it's being taught, and does it need to be rolled out nationally. So getting back to actually the first slide, a national plan is really imperative, but not just a national plan, but what is the plan? So that's it from me. I'm going to pass over to Deirdre Ryan now to carry on with a bit more results from the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker, who is the current chairperson of Chronic Pain Ireland and board member of Pain Alliance Europe. She has a very nice saying, which is, living well with chronic pain takes hard work, but compassionate micro-changes eventually amount to great progress, which I like particularly. May I introduce to you Deirdre Ryan.
Good morning. So first I'll explain my disclosures, as you can see. And I'll follow on from really what Paul has been saying. Also another challenge with the accent. I think that'll be the theme of the day, but hopefully we'll all get to the same point eventually. So the next question that we looked at, were there national and regional policies in place to incentivize people to either stay at work or return to work? And only a third of respondent countries that there was something in place. So where the policies were in place, it wasn't necessarily holistic. It may have been initiated by the patient. It may not have been by the employer. And from the respondents, really, they reported the discontinuity, if I could say it. So it may vary from workplace to workplace, that in certain sectors there's better regulation than in others. I mean, in Europe we've seen with European work safety there's been huge developments in that area, but it obviously depends on which sector that we work in. And as already stated, I think with this report you can see that really it raises as many questions as we've answered, and we're looking forward to looking in behind the questions, look at the supporting evidence, and make a more comprehensive report to really follow up on this. So next, we looked at pain management in vocational rehabilitation programs. So what did we learn? As well as rehabilitation, reintegration, there was a real split in the answers that we received. So both there's a gap in knowledge and there's a real split as in what is actually happening. So when there is a national policy, which we all answered correctly, when there is a national policy, it isn't consistent necessarily. And some of the comments that we got were that there's a lack of awareness, perhaps, around these policies too. So we may know that there's something there, but who does it apply to? And well, I heard at the SIP symposium that Malta or Germany are doing something, but actually at home, I'm not sure what we're doing maybe. So I think that's one thing that's come through in a lot of the questions is really the gap of who knows what. So healthcare clinicians may be more aware of how much training goes in, different regulation in that way. The patients maybe aren't as aware of that. So I think the opportunity with SIP absolutely always is to get everybody together. We're all facing the same challenge. And I think the responses that we received highlight how much work we have to do in terms of we have these platforms, but are we really sharing the information among who's involved? So lastly then, I brought up too many pages. Pain was not mentioned in at least half of the research strategies of respondents' country. We all hear about big data as it coming from the charity sector. We need the data to prove the point that there's so many people, that this is the need that's out there. Yet in the national strategies, chronic pain as a focus within the individual policies, we didn't find evidence of that. So it's present in most responses. It may be present, but it hasn't been implemented yet. And we all know with implementation, what's the next step in terms, is there a roadmap? What's there? What's the strategy of implementing that? And should that be what happens next? And then lastly, patient involvement. So patient involvement is not mandatory in developing pain research projects in at least half of the countries. So we are very patient-centered at SIP, but that isn't necessarily what's happening everywhere. Where it is mandatory, and I think as a patient I've experienced this as well, where often it's a matter of ticking the box. If I'm applying for a grant, I need patient involvement to say that I included patients. So we have a coffee and maybe a nice focus group. We tick the box and it stops there. So even when patients are involved, there's no indicator to the quality. It's not a profession, but we really have a lot to give in that instance. So it's seen as opportunistic, episodical, and is it really a true representation of patients if it's only ticking a box? And you may just be a member of the group in medical, civil, sort of victim projects, so to speak, even the language around that, victim, sufferer, rather than people living with chronic pain. So I will hand you back now to Vittoria. Thank you.
I think that already what we heard will be very informative and bear it in mind for the next session, because a lot will come up and we will look also at gaps and solutions. As my colleague said, these are really provisional results. We need to have a full analysis, and we will then get back to you towards the end of the year with this more broad analysis. One thing that we did, and it's worth sharing, even if it's just a snapshot, is we asked what are the biggest challenges and opportunities that you identified as responders so far in the implementation of national plans or national policies in general. And the challenges really reflect the priorities that SIP has been focusing on: the need for accurate data, the need for more support for research, and even more awareness of the general public and policymakers. Also, quite interesting and encouraging, especially for the European Pain Federation, is that while some of the victories have been achieved in pain education, even if there is a lot to do and a lot of ground still to cover, and there are efforts to put pain further up on the agenda. So while this gives you some food for thought, I will just again reiterate the next steps are the completion and collection. And one interesting thing, and you will learn more about this with our national efforts of the national platforms, some of them, at least a member of EFIC, approached us and say, can this survey be a template for further national surveys, which was going to be really interesting for further completion of data and understanding a better picture to the challenges that Paul was mentioning and the limitation of this survey. And again, availability in early 2020. Preliminary conclusion, really, we will go more in the nitty-gritty in the report, but yes, we are on the right track when it comes to priorities, need for further implementation of pain indicators, allocation of resources to research, better education and awareness, and patient empowerment, and when it comes to employment policies, include measures to stay and return at work for chronic pain patients. And another interesting fact is that the demographic of this survey really reflects the tentative to be really cooperative and inclusive also at national level. So we have the important stakeholder represented. And this was all from our research.
Okay, thank you very much. And to all of you, you okay? No, wait. We have a... And thank you for disclosing the latest data, and it shows that there's a lot to do, and no fear that there's nothing left to do for SIP, unfortunately. And we moved a lot, but mission is not accomplished by far not, and because you revealed also the gaps. Joke, do you have a question, first of all?
Well, as Victoria said, what are the implications of this study? How can we translate this into SIP work? And I would like to add to that, I represent EFNA, which is just a small portion of the pain patients, but a significant portion, I would say. And EFNA organizes this meeting in the Parliament called Brain, Mind and Pain. You may be familiar with these meetings, where we address issues which are of such major importance to this community as well. We organize these in the Parliament, we work with the MEPs, and so you can count on EFNA to work on your behalf as well. I think that's important to say today.
Okay, then maybe I have one question. I give you the microphone. I don't know whether you will be answering it. Can we have the first, I have to move that. The first question is like here, what you typed in. Education on pain, who? Patients, caregivers, health professionals. And I
think for my part, as a clinician, I would say everybody.
Everybody.
Because clearly the patients need to understand pain, they need to understand chronic pain, they already understand the impact of pain, but it's about giving them some more education which helps, I think, them understand how to, or it's part of the journey of learning to live with it. Health professionals clearly need to know a lot more about pain. If we were doing our jobs right, pain clinics shouldn't need to exist because it would be dealt with much earlier, much better, at a much wider and broader scope. And caregivers clearly need to know about pain because patients, you know, they have families, and if the families understand the impacts and what it's doing, and they do understand to an extent, I think, but sometimes I still see patients on a daily basis who hide things from their relatives. So I think if there was things available that could educate all of them at the right level, in the right way, that would certainly go a long way to helping.
There's another one maybe here. Who are the 36 answerers? Are they representative? Maybe you can answer this question.
So we repeated the methodology of the survey that we run already in 14 and 16. We decided to have the question run to the 36 EFIC chapters and all the members of Pain Alliance Europe and partners of ACN, if they were available, and the affiliate of Gruntal. So in that sense, I would say yes, they are representative because they are the constituencies of our respective organization. That being said, in the further analysis of the survey, we will look for discrepancies, and to Paul's point before, there is a chance that a stakeholder knows more than another about this, which personally I find a finding in itself.
And just one more point to add to that. Whenever you see a survey and then you see the number 36 next to it, my research brain already says, well, that's not enough. But actually, you have to combine that with the questions you're asking. We're asking a high-level, national level. We're aiming it at the people who are likely to know the answers to that. I suspect if we had put the survey out to everyone we know who's ever linked to EFIC, and many thousands of people who ever attend the conference, I would have got many thousands of different answers, and that would have meant less than aiming at the right people.
I found one striking information of the survey was the involvement of patients. Then it's not enough just to talk to them and said, hey, I talked to this patient, and then that was the involvement. It needs much more. Maybe you can hand the mic.
I think there have been this great progress has been made. The very fact that we're all here is testament to that. But as Vittoria said, there's disparities between who knows what, and when things are happening, what is the quality of that intervention or education program or quality of the involvement, and also standardization. So we talk about education for patients, but it's different in lots of different countries. So we use broad terms, but it can mean very different things for different people. And ultimately, it's patients that see that difference. And when we get together, we can go, okay, well, my country's like this or your country's like that. But essentially, it's the same challenges anyway. So really, when we take the higher look at the data as to what's happening everywhere, it's still the same challenges. We may be doing it in a different way, but the involvement of patients is essential because it's ultimately for them. And to see how that came through in the survey, I think was quite interesting.
Thank you very much. And I would close this session with a big applause for the participants. Thank you. And Joke, thank you very much. And you can stay here because you are the next co-moderator. The next topic is headlined with the SIP Thematic Network Program, What's Next? And I'm sure he'd love to be here, but unfortunately it was not possible, so he gave a video message. Let's watch Martin Sekel from the European Commission, DG Health and Food Sanity.
The 2019 Symposium on Social Impact of Pain. I regret not being with you in person to discuss the important chosen themes, but I'm looking forward to learning about the outcomes of your event. I believe that the relevance of social impact of pain cuts across many fields. We need to raise the awareness of the whole range of relevant actors about pain and to inform them about the best ways to address it and increase the quality of life of patients. In June 2017, a thematic network on social impact of pain was created under the EU Health Policy Platform. This platform provides an opportunity for interest groups to get in contact with each other. In 2018, SIP ran in parallel a thematic network and a stakeholder network in the platform. And the SIP produced a joint statement which was presented in 2 webinars available on the Public Health website dedicated page. They presented their final joint statement at the EU Health Policy Platform annual meeting. Since then, SIP continued their work in the stakeholder network and the platform, which so far has 117 members. Let me now say a few words about the future. The new Commission took office only a few days ago. The mission letter to the Commissioner for Health provides clear priorities for the coming years. For example, the need to support member states in constantly improving the quality and sustainability of their health systems, ensuring the supply of medicinal products, making the most of the potential of e-health to provide high-quality healthcare and reduce inequalities, putting forward a plan, a Europe Beating Cancer plan, to support member states to improve cancer prevention and care. As you all know, pain care and recognition of pain as a disease or a condition falls under the responsibility of the member states. But the European agenda is clearly linked to preventing and addressing pain. And I can take the example of the Cancer Action Plan. It should propose actions to strengthen our approach at every key stage of the disease: prevention, diagnosis, treatment, life as a cancer survivor, and palliative care. And to be successful, we must tackle cancer holistically, from multiple angles and involving multiple stakeholders, including those outside the health sector. This approach will also support member states in reaching the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the WHO targets on non-communicable diseases. And I want to stress that public health authorities cannot address this challenge alone. A health in all policies and multi-stakeholder approach is needed to effectively establish healthy lifestyles and reduce the prevalence of cancer. Finally, I would like to update you on the opportunities for health under the new multi-annual financial framework currently being discussed in the interinstitutional setting. The Commission proposed an envelope of 101 billion euros for the European Social Fund Plus, and a dedicated health strand is incorporated in the ESF Plus with a budget of 413 million euros to support national reform processes for more effective, accessible and resilient health systems and better health promotion and disease prevention. In addition, the health cluster of Horizon Europe will have a proposed budget of 7.7 billion euros. These funding programs will strengthen the potential of EU-level cooperation to deliver significant added value on prevention and control of non-communicable diseases. By continued collaboration, coordinating effectively, using all available tools and focusing on prevention as well as treatment, we can better protect the health of Europe's citizens. I wish you a very productive conference.
And you can introduce the next speaker.
I am delighted to...
Okay.
So I think that this was actually a perfect segue in our next speaker, and also this is very important for our last session where we will talk about the future, what can be done. But first, let's take a step back into the past and this important achievement that we have with the thematic network program. So I'm delighted to introduce you Bruna Fullen. She's the Associate Professor and President-elect of the European Pain Federation. As Bart already says, she's the first female president, but I mean, I am proud to work with her on a personal level.
Thank you, Victoria. So, as many of you know, the vision and mission of the European Pain Federation is built around 3 core pillars: research, education, and advocacy for improved government policies impacting on pain. And we do this, I suppose, by, as we're doing today, shining a spotlight on the societal impact that pain incurs. And in the European Pain Federation, our advocacy work is chaired by Professor Thomas Tulla, who works with Victoria in the Executive Office. These are my disclosures. However, I would also like to disclose that I don't think in the next few minutes that I've been given that I can adequately capture the significant effort undertaken over the last number of years by everybody in this room and beyond, but I'll do my best. So I'd like to briefly outline, I suppose, our work over with SIP in the last 10 years, summarise the outputs and our outcomes that have allowed us to build and strengthen, I suppose, the work of SIP. And these discussions then will frame the rest of the day, whereas Victoria mentioned we're building on where we're going to next. When SIP was awarded one of the thematic networks, Victoria Carrera, representing the European Pain Federation, and Anka Pop from Pain Alliance Europe, led this work on behalf of the large number of partners in SIP. And the thematic, obviously developing a thematic network, allowed us to collate, I suppose, documents summarising the impact that pain has, relating to best practice policies and to best practice and policy initiatives. And developing these statements and putting all this information together is so important because these statements directly influence the European Commission's approach to health policy. So what did we do? With input from we engaged with our stakeholder community throughout the whole process, initially virtually with thanks to the European Commission that hosted 2 webinars where we refined and discussed our documents. We then moved to face-to-face meetings with our more closer allies. Many of you are here in the room today, and this provided input for our documents that we produced. So in terms of our outcomes and outputs, we produced 3 papers. The first paper, the SIP framing paper, and I suppose this identified existing policies and advocacy initiatives relevant to tackle the societal impact of pain, and this acted as a foundation, I suppose, for the development of the SIP joint statement that we also produced. And the SIP joint statement, I suppose, summarised agreed recommendations to address the gaps identified in the SIP framing paper. And I suppose, in essence, it compiled a list of policy asks for governments, for other stakeholders, and I suppose as us, as organisations, in trying to move forward with improving pain policies. We also produced an infographic, which you can see. Again, it's just a visual representation of our work that's easily distributed, and I think a useful addition to have in terms of communicating our successes, but also our asks going forward. So these papers then allowed for further engagement with stakeholder groups, and as you heard from Bart earlier, our documents have been endorsed by hundreds of policymakers, patients, healthcare professionals, civil societies, and the private sector. And since our year as a thematic network has finished, we have further honed our document and summarised it into 4 key, I suppose, asks that we'll be discussing and that'll inform today's discussion. So our priorities are pain as a health indicator,
pain and employment, pain research, and pain education. The document also facilitated the development of the SIP toolkit, and this is a great framework for individual countries to develop their own national SIP community. I'm delighted to see that we have 9 national SIP chapters, and I'm sure there are more to come. And this is important. National SIP chapters are important because it allows each country to gather relevant information necessary for communicating with their individual governments with regards to policy asks for improving pain. So moving forward, I suppose the remainder of the day is I suppose focusing on the successes of the last 10 years, but then deciding where are we going in the next 10 years. We need to build on our successes so that we can advance pain, reduce the impact of pain from a societal perspective and build a strong foundation for the next decade of SIP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruna. Thank you for your presentation. Are there questions to what you have heard? Or maybe you wrote a question, what's next, and how can we capitalize on it? There was one question, how can we capitalize on it? There was one, can we just have this one Swarmworks question, please? Yeah. What comes after the SIP thematic network program? How we further capitalize on it? Maybe you can briefly, you probably answered it already a little bit, but...
Well, I think that's the purpose of the rest of today's session. We have our 4 priorities, so we need to come together and devise, an agenda going forward that can build on. We've identified where the limitations are with our documents, so in a constructive and concise way, we work through the 4 key priority areas and strategize about how we can...
Prioritization and strategy.
Yeah. Across...
strategy across the...
Pain as a healthcare indicator, education,
the 4 pillars.
Research. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. That's not the case so far. Is there anything you would like to add? What we just heard?
I think that Bruno summarized it
Put
perfectly.
it a little closer.
Yes. So indeed, today we will try to give answer. We will try to focus on concrete point for implementation of the 4 pillars that the joint statement has identified. And we open the discussion.
Thank you very much. Victoria, Bruna, thank you. And we will proceed with the next topic, which is a keynote, pain on the political agenda after the elections of the European elections. And he's also wanted to be here, but unfortunately he had to stay in Malta. But fortunately he also gave a message. Let's listen to Alfred Sand. Alfred Sand is head of the Maltese delegation of the S&D group in the European Parliament. Oh, I've just seen there's one quiz question. Can we? Very important, because it might be the quiz question and you get points. Thank you very much. Okay. How much is spent in the European Commission on pain-related research during Horizon 2020? It's a group response, so please find the answer, and we hope it's right. All right. Let's see what your guess and estimation was? And here is the answer. And the right answer is... points for the groups with 190 million euro answer. Next, we have another one. What should be the focus of pain research in Europe? Just posted. Click on the pencil. And pass it on. All right. Everybody so far okay? Then we have one multiple choice question for you guys. Are patients sufficiently involved in the European pain research? It's an individual response, so give your answer and pass the iPad around the table. There's still a couple of votes missing. 72 votes, and we are more than 72 people. All right, I think we've reached a certain majority. Let's look at the answer. So that means there's a lot to do, what we just also saw from the survey, and we have to put much more effort in pain research. And now, as I just announced a few minutes ago, let's listen to Alfred Sand, and he will talk about pain on the political agenda. Here's Alfred Sand.
First, I would like to thank the organizers of this year's symposium for inviting me here. Unfortunately, I cannot make it due to other commitments that are taking place in Malta. Back in 2017, I provided my endorsement for that year's symposium. I also did that in the background of the Maltese presidency of the Council of the EU, whereby pain was included as one of the presidency's health priorities. That political backing provided the right impetus for pain to feature in the political discourse revolving around European health policy making. I think that such prominence is well justified. Pain is a common element of numerous chronic diseases that negatively affect the lives of patients. For example, just 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to provide my views for an event organized by the Maltese Parliament on World Arthritis Day. When discussing such a widespread disease, one just cannot sideline the pain symptom, a major distress it is for those suffering this condition. Indeed, the burden that pain is having on individuals' private lives and eventually on society as a whole should not be underestimated. This is especially relevant for those patients suffering from chronic pain, whereby treatment is very often having a further negative impact on their lives. At this point, with the new European Parliament that has just started and the new Commission that it's waiting for its final approval, we must make sure that the subject of pain as a political priority remains and that a new policy on the matter is developed further. And to do this, we need first to make sure that we have accurate and updated statistics on patients that suffer from pain, especially chronic pain. We need to analyze better the impact that the burden of private individuals is also having on the European economy, including the various national healthcare systems and their funding. Finally, we need to make sure that a structured and coordinated EU system of exchanging information and sharing best practices across countries is created and eventually fully maintained. This should include the possibility of EU financing wherever needed. I remain available for any backing that I could provide in this venture.
And I'm sure he will hear the applause, and it's a strong message that pain remains on the political agenda, and we have a supporter with Alfred Sand, and he pushed a lot from the political side, from the European political side. And we move on to the next topic, and this is one of the 4 pillars. We talk about research, and please welcome my co-moderator. He is the Executive Director of the European Brain Council, EBRA. If you want to learn more about EBRA, please look at the poster. There's a poster here, and then you can inform yourself. Please welcome Frederick Destrebeck. Frederick, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Michael. Actually, the EBRA poster number 14, right up there. My colleagues will
Thank
be...
you. You spotted the poster. Yeah, thank you.
Actually. Can I call all the speakers on stage in order to get started for our session? So that means Gertrude, Marianne, Elisabetta, Petra, Monica, and Thomas, please. So, Michael, are you launching questions first, or we get started? Okay, perfect. So I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Gertrude Buttigieg. Gertrude is the chairperson of the Malta Health Network and has served over the last 12 years as a patient advocate and contributed to raising awareness on patient rights, patient education, and patient empowerment in Malta. Gertrude, you have the floor.
So, for those who didn't see the film, go and see The Malta Story, which is a very old film. This is my disclosures. So, in 2013, there was no organization in Malta that was addressing the issue of chronic pain. Malta Health Network decided to put chronic pain on its agenda, as it was considered an important national issue, and we never looked back. Following the success of our neighbors Italy in hosting an informal ministers for health meeting on pain during the Italian presidency, it was decided that MHN should involve the Maltese presidency of the Council of Europe, which was approaching in 2017. And together with SIP Europe, we made a collaborative effort to this task. In 2016, we held extensive meetings with health authorities, MEPs, and important stakeholders to support our request. And as most of you know, we managed to get our way, and we did host SIP Symposium 2017 in Malta, which I proudly add was a successful event. However, a recurring question we were constantly asked was, how big is the problem? We quoted European data, but almost everyone asked, but how big is the problem in Malta? And we could not answer. In July 2016, we called a meeting for all interested stakeholders to set up the SIP platform in Malta. This involved representatives of relevant patient groups, professionals, health service providers, policymakers, Maltese politicians, and MEPs. Meetings were held and we formed a core group. With a lot of support from SIP Europe, we started looking at the research we could replicate in Malta. I guess that by now you are wondering, how is it possible that an NGO with no full-time staff, no researchers, and no funds could think of venturing on such a project? We considered all options until there was a call for proposals for local funding through the voluntary organization projects. Being a fully registered NGO compliant with legal legislation, we submitted a proposal. We teamed up with No Pain Foundation since we had bigger chances of getting funds, since collaborations are important for this type of funding. Our team of experts was set up at including a palliative specialist, public health specialist, an epidemiologist, a bioticist, myself as coordinator, and 2 representatives from No Pain Foundation. We drafted a proposal which was submitted in October 2016, and the beginning of 2017, we knew that we were going to have the funds. I believe that the secret of our success was that we had a very dedicated team. We believed and shared the same vision. So since we were all experts in our field but did not have much experience in the area, we engaged a project manager who helped in the project implementation, tenders, procurement, reporting. Since this was a public funding, we had very strict and transparent procurement mechanisms. So we had almost 2 teams: the scientific team, which was developing the research questions and overseeing the research. We engaged a professional research company to carry out the survey. From the data collection to completion, it took about 6 months, with the whole project taking us 2 years. With the results, we produced a small booklet. We had a conference, a leaflet with research findings. We did 2 infographics, one in Maltese and one in English, which are available on YouTube. So what's next? With the results in our hand, we made policy recommendations, which are robust and evidence-based. We have presented these to the Minister of Health and requested that there is a national pain plan. However, it doesn't seem that this is on the government's agenda. In 2019, Malta has a new president to whom we presented the results, and he is fully supporting our work and strengthening the voice of our members to contribute towards policy development in Malta. This year, the government has embarked on developing Malta Health Strategy 2020+, and we intend to use our findings about chronic pain in our feedback to the strategy. I would like to conclude by encouraging organizations present here to actively look out at funding and partnership opportunities for any research you consider worth, since having robust data is the only way of how to strengthen your argument and drive policy development and ultimately change. For those of you who want to know how big the problem is in Malta, I invite you to join the poster session in the lunch break, where one of our team, my colleague Dr. Mario Grishti, will be presenting the results of our research in the poster here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me introduce you to our next speaker. She is director of the Herpes Virus Association and Shingles Support Society. She is also trustee of Pain UK and the board member of the Pain Alliance. She also, I quote her, she also has a nice saying, chronic pain affects all aspects of person's life. I work to help raise awareness and to improve the quality of those patients. Put your hands together for Marianne Nicholson.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What do patients think and feel about their involvement in pain research? When can we get involved? How can we get involved? These are all questions that all patient support charities are asked to be involved with. So for Pain Alliance Europe, nothing. Right. So Pain Alliance Europe, we're involved at a European level. We find that patient associations' involvement in research projects is written into the scoping document. This is a very good idea. Trouble is, we find that many patient associations feel it is very difficult to be involved, and that when they are involved, it's more just a tick box exercise so that the researcher can say that this has been done. At a national level, a lot of small or disease-specific associations feel that they are inadequate to be involved in this research because so often it is written in a highly scientific language. They find this difficult to understand, and quite often we find a very short response time. Makes it difficult for small voluntary action organizations to be involved. PAE is motivated to participate in research when we see that there is a potential to improve the quality of life for people with chronic pain, and when it has a Europe-wide dimension. So we have a few projects that we've been involved with, and I'll talk a tiny bit about each of these following examples. There is the Paris Hip and Knee Replacement Project, funded by the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This was started to get more insight on how to implement patient-recorded outcomes measurements, that's the PROMs, in healthcare system as a reference point. So hip and knee replacements were chosen for this piece of work because there's already a lot going on in the area. It was actually a follow-up to the SIP meeting at the OECD in Paris. Then we have CRODIS Plus. It's a successor of the CRODIS Joint Action Project. It's about the difficulties chronic patients find that they have to overcome. Our involvement is in the work and employment aspect of this, and it's one of the main focus areas of PAE. The project has developed a toolkit for employers, and poster number 16 has got a lot more about this. Our involvement was because of the joint statement on the EU thematic network. The GRIP project, not there. Developing a program to support GPs in dealing with as yet unexplained somatic complaints, and more information on the GRIP network. I Am Pain Car, which we're not going to talk about here because Petra's going to be talking about that. PAE surveys, Europe-wide, are projects which can easily be done in individual countries by national associations. These provide invaluable information on how the real experts, the patients, experience the chosen topic for your survey. Each year, PAE is getting more responses to our surveys. Right. The next step is going to be how to involve patients and patient representatives at an earlier stage in the research. When you're identifying a topic or research area in the design phase, please. To do this, we need stronger empowerment of patients' associations, more respect for patient associations at the national level, and please, the use of understandable patient-friendly language, please. PAE is doing this with its Brain, Mind and Pain Patient-Centered Innovation Grant. And grant, folks, means money. Check out the BMP website. This year, the grant is focused on Stop Stigma. We have 90,000 euros to divide among the projects. All you have to do is send in your project by the end of the year. The jury consists of patients as well as patient representatives to ensure that the patient input and involvement is guaranteed. I encourage you all to submit your applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Next panelist is Elisabetta Vodano, who is scientific manager at the Innovative Medicines Initiative. So the IMI is a public-private partnership funding health research and innovation. And through its projects, the IMI contributes to the acceleration of medicines development processes, the generation of new scientific insights, and the development of resources for open use by the research community. So Elisabetta, you're responsible for the IMI PAIN project, and we look forward to your contribution to the panel. Please welcome Elisabetta.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And first of all, I think if I can manage to click this. Okay, no things here. So, as been already said, so IMI is a public-private partnership, part of the European framework, now at first FP7 and now the Horizon 2020. And as such is really a partnership where we have on one side funding that is given to different eligible partners, like can be also patient and patient organization, and also GPs that are provided by the European Commission. And on the other side, most importantly, contribution from contributing partners, which are mainly members of the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industry and Association, which means that mainly the main pharmaceutical companies, but also now we have other partners that are other type of industry in some cases, and also not-for-profit that have joined IMI as associated partners. But the most important point is that in IMI, what we do then, we fund very challenging areas that you see there. Of course, one important area is that of brain research and also, most importantly, pain research. And we have a portfolio of projects of which Petra will present the most important and actually, let's say, research intensive, a very active project at the moment that is the IMI Pain Care. But in total, we have invested around nearly 50 million euros. So you can also see in comparison of what is the total funding. And I would like to stress that this is composed both of funding, say cash given by the Commission, but also most importantly, the same amount of half of that is resources that have been put in by contributing partners. And this is extremely important because it's really the brain of this and resources of this contributing partner that really enable strongly this initiative in a unique way. And so I think what we have been trying to do in IMI, and we hope to continue to do, is really to try to make connection and break silos, which means that when we talk about our approach as a portfolio approach, but also in each project, and I think also Petra will say more about that, is really the fact to try to join the different scientists, the different stakeholders that are involved in a research activity, so that we can really think from the people that work in the lab and then the one that will have maybe to implement a solution one day, hopefully in the field, in a healthcare system, and also to really make a new community that will then go beyond also a project and create standards and create something that could be really implemented in reality to really create impact and something that will continue. And I think really what we have been doing in IMI, and I think we can proudly say that we have been quite successful in this, is really to create an ecosystem for innovative collaboration. And this is because IMI really work as a neutral platform. You need someone neutral where everybody can work together and feel confident to work together in a non-competitive way and really share challenges. So really to put all the stakeholders together from day one so that they are there on the table and can get really an understanding. It can be also simply language. Are we talking all the same language? Do we understand the patient, the GP, the research, the clinician, the regulators? We really understand when we talk about something that we mean the same thing? and also really to try in this way really to move forward in areas of very unmet medical needs. Of course, chronic pain is, and pain in general is very important, of course. And really to try to get something that is not simply an increment, but hopefully something that can be transformative for the future. We all hope that really to reduce both the fact that it takes so long and often there is not so much success in creating new treatment for the patients, and also speed the access of patient to any solution that will come out there, and improve health outcome and find solutions that can be sustainable. And this is really by creating community where most importantly we can involve, of course, on one side the researcher, the pharma company, but also new company like diagnostic companies, other sector, healthcare practitioner, payer, and also most importantly the patient. And indeed we have patients in most of our projects, and now also we would like to involve more in patient in IMI via the creation of a pool of patients that we hope will be able to really help us to better guide our strategy. And when we talk about the future, we know that now what is coming after Horizon 2020 will be Horizon Europe, and Monica, I think, will talk a little bit more of that. And there is, of course, in a discussion also a new partnership for health that could be part of the problem and the program. And I would like to only to indicate that at the moment that there is also a public stakeholder consultation that can be reached via this website on what might be in the future research agenda of such a possible partnership. And of course, you are very, very welcome to contribute to this consultation and survey. The deadline, I think, is the 23rd of November, so you still have a little bit of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, you probably wonder what the artist is doing here on this side of your right side of the stage. Well, that is Maria, and she's from the agency Visuality. And for the next 4 chapters, she tries to convert the content into a piece of art. So we start with the pain research, that's the first field, and she will continue, and later on we can see what she tries to do and what she tries to paint and pick up of the content. Let's move to the next speaker. She is head of the Department of Grants and Partnerships at Grünenthal, and in her function she works with public-private partnerships, and she also says the ambitious goal of reducing suffering of pain patients requires efforts of first the European decision makers and multiple stakeholders in pain R&D. Would you please welcome Petra Bloms-Funke.
So thank you, Michael. And I would like to thank the organizers of this SIP meeting for giving me the opportunity to talk about working in public-private partnerships to improve clinical pain management. As an example of pain research in Europe, I would like to present an overview of the project My Pain Care, which was just mentioned. Okay, my personal statement, as Michael said, I'm an employee at Grünenthal, and My Pain Care. This project has received funding from the IMI joint undertaking, which in return receives its support from the European Commission and from the European pharmaceutical companies FPA. So, My Pain Care. The overall project, My Pain Care, is comprised of 3 sub-projects. So, PROMPT, providing standardized patient-reported outcomes, outcome measures for improving pain treatment. BioPain, improving translatability of functional biomarkers in pain pathways. And TRIP, improving translation in chronic pelvic pain. And whereas these 3 sub-projects address distinct aspects and scientific challenges, bringing them together into one project created the opportunity for valuable cross-fertilization and synergism. So now let's move on. So My Pain Care is co-led by Professor Trede and myself. The consortium is made up by 40 partners, all renowned pain experts, and 2 of them from the US. It's an unprecedented close collaboration between multiple stakeholders, from pharmaceutical companies, from universities and hospitals, from small, mid-sized companies, from patient organizations and pain societies. This project started in April 2018, and it will end in March 22. Its total budget is 23 million euros, and this is certain to enable the project to have significant positive impacts on pain healthcare. One highlight of the first 18 months of this project was that 3 European patient organizations, all members of our project I My Pain Care, impacted strongly on a Delphi process which shows outcome domains in acute post-surgical pain, and also on the details of a study protocol in chronic pelvic pain. I My Pain Care set out to provide new approaches for patient stratification, and thus we consider it another highlight that the agencies EMA, FDA, and NIH are all highly engaged in this project at this early time point. All of them offered their support to ensure that forthcoming results, which will generate evidence for subjective and objective markers for patient stratifications, will be adopted in a timely manner, which means as quickly as possible, into their pain guidances. So in overall, we hope that I My Pain Care will increase the health and well-being of European citizens by improving the management of pain. However, upon completion of I My Pain Care and other current pain projects, there are certain to be so many challenges which will still remain as major medical, societal, and economic burdens in Europe. As a consequence, continuous commitment in pain R&D is needed by the European Commission and also by all healthcare stakeholders in all European countries. I will stop here. More information about I My Pain Care is given on a poster which will be presented during lunchtime, and we have some flyers and brochures on the small booth outside in the other room. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Petra. And I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Monica Encini. Monica worked for the last 4 years at the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, as a national expert, and recently joined the DG Research as Policy and Program Officer in the Unit on Combating Diseases. So please welcome Monica.
Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting us. I represent today DG RTD here, Research and Innovation. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for guessing right the amount of money that has been spent in Horizon 2020 and for pain-related research. And I would like to say that is probably underestimated, because it's just up to August 2019, and we are now in the process of finalizing grants, consortium agreement, and at least 2 of them, 2 big projects, have a very big focus on pain. So this is certainly very good news. I just would like to highlight for you very quickly what the next program will be. The next program called Horizon Europe. I'm sure you know everything about it already, so I'll be very quick. Horizon Europe is the natural evolution of a very successful animal that was Horizon 2020. It will maintain its structure in 3 pillars. The first pillar will be focused on basic science. It's called Excellent Science, and it will contain all the actions for the ERC, the European Research Council, the Marie Curie actions, and last but not least, the European infrastructures. The second pillar, that is called Global Challenges and European Industrial Competitiveness, has changed slightly name from Horizon 2020. will focus on 6 major clusters, and one of them that are basically cover the overall of the scope of where research and innovation is needed, and one of them is of course health, and it will also cover the Joint Research Center, the JRC. I go back 1 second to the first pillar of the excellent science. The portfolio for that proposed is 13.5 billions. The pillar 2 is 52.7 billions. The first pillar will be bottom up. Second pillar will be top down. It means that it needs a lot of strategic thinking. And the third pillar, called Innovative Europe, will cover the European innovation ecosystems, the European Institute of Innovation and Technologies, that are entities that exist already, but there will be a big novelty about the European Innovation Council. It's a new entity, a new object that is being piloted already in Horizon 2020. It will be it's meant to be a one-stop shop for bringing breakthrough innovation to the market where possibly risk is too high for investors, and so public money will be used to push this. And this will have a 25.8 billion portfolio. So overall, Horizon Europe has a proposed portfolio by the Commission of 100 billion. It's the biggest ever research and innovation program. Now, in April, the Council and the Parliament reached a political agreement on the key elements of Horizon Europe, but, as you know, the issue here is the budget. The budget is still under heavy and, I would say, very tense negotiations. In the next 2 weeks, and there will be certainly very crucial exchanges. The portfolio of Horizon Europe depends on the budget that will be decided by the member states. So it is important that at national levels there are actions that will underlie and will support the importance of maintaining this big commitment that is being proposed by the Commission. So at the moment, we are working on a strategic planning that mainly will cover the pillar of the second pillar, where the health cluster is contained. And you heard Martin Seychelles mentioning 7.7 billion for that, for the cluster on health, which is numerically cluster 1. So at the moment, there is available a further moment of consultation on the strategic planning. You probably have heard that the planning is a process, will involve a process of co-creation, meaning that there's been extensive consultation with all partners. And at the moment, there is a consultation open on the latest version of the strategic planning. It's open till the 17th of November. As an umbrella organization, you are specifically targeted to give input. So you go into the Horizon 2020 website and you will find the link to enter and give your input for this. The strategic planning already has identified 6 health-related challenges, and I'm sure they will be possibly music for your ears. I quote from the document. The challenges are staying healthy in a rapidly changing society, living and working in a health-promoting environment, tackling diseases and reducing disease burden, ensuring access to sustainable and high-quality healthcare, unlocking the full potential of new tools, technologies, and digital solutions for a healthy society, maintaining a sustainable and globally competitive health-related industry. And specifically in the Tackling Diseases and Reducing Disease Burden chapter, and I quote again, one of the key research and innovation orientation is better understanding of diseases and their drivers, including pain and the causative links between health determinants and diseases. So this is specifically mentioned in the plan. I would like to strike a note about patient involvement because we are absolutely thrilled when we see projects that involve patients. And actually, during grant negotiation, when we see that civil societies and patients are not involved, we actually insist to have them involved. So yeah, for the sake of time, I thank you very much. We are always ready and very interested in hearing the outcomes of your work, all the data you produce, all the knowledge that you own, and that it will be very useful for us to incorporate in our future work program. We have the questions, but of course you have the answer to make things better. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. So now is the time for last speaker, Professor Thomas Töller. Thomas is a board member of EFIC, but also professor of neurology at the Technische Universität in Munich, Germany. Thomas' research and clinical interests include the prevention and treatment of chronic neuropathic pain. So please welcome Thomas.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak after a representative of DG Research and to hear about all this money that shall go to pain. I'm convinced some will arrive. Well, I'm speaking on behalf of the advocacy committee of the European Pain Federation. This committee is also related to research in the way that what is coming out and the brain drain of the research committee, which is run by Giselle Pickering, is then translated into political action and into development of a roadmap, how that can be achieved. And in this term also, of course, the relationship to SIB is very extensive. And it's a wish of Giselle and also, of course, of me, representing the advocacy, that we get more patient involvement. As you say, this is not only a chance, this is a need. And we also think because this has changed, I think all of our opinion on how we have to do research has changed. We have a lot of different ideas how we can, so there's almost nothing. What we think, that we refer to what the EU has told us in Horizon 2020, that we have to concentrate more on these techniques that we call today e-health, m-health, and digital medicine. And you're right that specific challenges, and I have to read this, empowering the hospitalized patients, outpatients, and their families, carers to support a continuum of care across a range of services can relieve the pressure on governments to provide more cost-effective healthcare system, and so on. And you recommend 3 points like telemedicine services to follow patients with chronic or rare diseases after hospital, and also to have e-mental health for patients, empowerment with self-management tools and blended care, and also domestic rehabilitation. And this is very much on the agenda of the European Pain Federation, and this we will also elaborate together with the social impact of pain group, because we think, and Elisabetta said this, that what we have to do is to speed up the contact to our patients in order to get an earlier good or moderately adequate treatment. And in order to do this, not to speak about all this in a long way, the appreciation of how important this is totally different between doctors and patients. So while patients think that this is a big chance and that they will get more impact, that they will get more information, more content, more contact between them and between doctors and them, doctors are much more resistant because they think this is more for exchanging some data or so, or maybe a letter, but that they not really can approach to have a good contact with patients and to enlarge the population that we really all have to serve and that we cannot serve all over Europe. And because of this, we have put on our agenda something which I'm a little bit hesitant to elaborate, because yesterday night this approach reached, I got the European Civic Prize, and nevertheless, we have talked about this in the executive board since long, and we want to continue in this. And we think that this is a good blueprint that we can use. Early prevention in patients with risk for chronic back pain, and we want to make back pain an example because we also have this kind of first chance that we can see, which has worked in Germany. And what we, what we want to make is an electronic health record. And as you know, EFIC himself is able with 34 chapters to disseminate our logistics and our knowledge and expertise in pain into all these countries that are part of European Pain Federation. And with an electronic health record, we can be extremely skilled to exchange information between all these partners. And what is most important to us, and we will not forget that this is a major part of our meeting also, that this will allow us to implement ICD-11 and also ICF in this kind of a project at a very early stage, and to then challenge ourselves with a lot of patients to get data on this. Then, of course, we, as EFIC, we have such kind of a therapy navigator, which has a guideline in the back. We know that the guidelines regarding back pain are not too different in our countries. Anyways, this will give us a chance also to get this streamlined between all our countries in Europe, to get guidelines where we can get better data together, because we are all proceeding in treating patients in more or less the same way. And where this is not available, then EFIC has to stand up and get this organized in order to develop such kind of guidelines. Then we have the aspect of teleconsultation. I think this is rather important, and also this can be done cross-border in the end, even in order to discuss with colleagues and with patients the best way of treatment. And then, of course, we have the patient empowerment that you learned to know yesterday already with the multimodal pain app, which you can translate into 37 languages if you want, and what we then would need also in those that will partner into this. So we ourselves think that if this is the next step, and we think that the health system is kind of disruptive, and this is a big chance that we implement the digital medicine into not only collecting data, like with ICD-11 and ICF, but also to disseminate our very best knowledge of how to treat patients in a really broad way at an early stage of the disease. Come on. To summarize, of course, we are involved in other pain projects like IMA Pain Care, but we have also another ambition. We constructed something what we call European Pain Forum, which is an association of almost all relevant European organizations, medical societies like orthopedics, neurologists, anesthesiologists, pain psychologists. And this is a group of many 100,000 of doctors and healthcare professionals which have organized themselves in order to pre-negotiate with each other what is relevant in pain. And then the slogan is more power by a broader basis. because we then have a joint interest in what we proceed also to the European Parliament in order to discuss with you. This is a little bit aside SIP, but anyway, you will all agree that this, of course, will strongly impact also into the activity of the SIP things that are planned and that will go on. So the next steps that we see in front of us as the European Pain Federation is to feed these approaches that we have explained into EU research, and there will be certainly discussing, Frederick, also with EBRA, how we can get information, how we should proceed, and probably and hopefully also with you to give us advice, how we can or could realize such kind of an approach, because I think we are prepared. We have the different countries, we have the different logistics, the organizations, we have the doctors, and most importantly, we have the patients. And, of course, this will all be very interesting and will very much be supported by the activity of SIP. And we thank for this, and of course we are delighted to be in that team. Thank you.
And we say thank you to you, Thomas. Thank you very much. I have a question to you. These rise up, what you just explained. Do you think this can also be, no, they open it. This can also be a tool to prevent chronic pain, because you are also involved in research and prevention is the best way, is the best treatment.
Well, I think this of course can be a step, but listen, this rise up is an approach stratifying patients on the basis of start backs. So we know that about 30% at a very early stage with all the yellow flags they cover have a high risk to develop chronic back pain. So I would say this is early secondary prevention. Well, maybe one can come close to late primary prevention, whatever the clinical feature might be. But of course, indeed, but you know, the problem is very, very big. It's bigger than you might imagine to do primary prevention with something. And this is what Bart has announced with the MOVE campaign. Of course, we know how we would have better health also in respect to our back if we would start and would exercise every day. But who is doing that? So I think there is multiple opportunities to develop it into that direction. But at the very beginning, I would say, although this is not a very good starting point, let's prevent that many of these people that are, I would say, millions in Europe, and also millions at risk with back pain, that they get a treatment late on, not early on. And we know already the effectiveness, and we know that the development of these digital techniques are really fast. And can you just imagine if you change something and you will have it with light velocity on every smartphone that you have in Europe, and you can change things, whatever you want to do. And I think we have to gain a new understanding. And so I really believe, and EFIC believes, and we want to put our weight on that we have to be also disruptive in this respect.
Thank you very much. The session is open for your questions. Do you have a question? Here is a question. Maybe I'll come over to you. Thank you.
Viorica Cursaro, Pain Alliance Europe. I have a question for Petra. Petra, you mentioned the IMI Delphi project. What a wonderful name. Could you tell us how innovation could be brought to the patients? And when I said patients, I meant patients irrespective of the country or region they are living in. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. As I mentioned, we make multiple efforts from IMI Pain Care already. This is, we reach out to the regulatory bodies and to ensure that our results are adopted as quickly as possible into their regulatory guidelines. As quickly as possible is obviously not always as quickly as needed for satisfaction. And this is something I'm happy to address here, that in addition to such initiatives, establishing networked pain centers of excellence throughout Europe would really be helpful to my mind. So these centers of excellence could adopt new findings earlier than they even appear in guidelines, and they could act as catalysts to ensure that these new findings are adopted also in less specialized centers across Europe. So they would have the responsibility for improving both the quality and uniformity of research and best clinical practice across Europe to the benefit of patients, as you said, in the whole of Europe. This is really something I would encourage. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Petra. Maybe you would like to add something?
No, I just would like to come with one of the things that appear in the questions you asked earlier, Michael, on the issue of patient involvement. And actually, we heard from Marianne that actually it should be more than a cup of coffee diplomacy, that also it should be more than a thick box on the side of Elisabetta and Monica. So I just wanted to ask the two of you how you actually ensure that the assessment of projects, Monica, you emphasized that actually projects or applications involving patients would be regarded more positively. But is there anything specific in the assessment by your evaluators that is included there? And afterwards, Marianne, maybe you could maybe give us an insight as to how you would think patient involvement is meaningful in this context.
Well, from the point of view of IMI, what we do is, of course, we ensure that when a topic text is written, we analyze if when there is a section that talk about the stakeholder that should be involved, we have always a careful assessment that the patient voice is involved and is mentioned clearly in the topic text, because that's actually the only way that the applicant read it. And then, of course, the evaluators also will see, and they have a specific criterion for the evaluation of the stakeholders that are involved, if there is the right people around the table to create whatever the project should create. And that's, I think, is the most practical way to do that.
Yes, I confirm it's the same for the topics that are called in the work programs of research and innovation of the health area. So it's specifically written in the text, but as I mentioned, we also have a second moment where we can force, let's say it as it is, force, insist in having included the right stakeholders, and in this specific case, patients. Of course, it's important to say is that if patients are involved from the very beginning, and they should be in the concept of the project, they will also be called into the construction of the project itself, and also receive funding for their efforts. And this is, of course, very crucial, because otherwise this parsley on the turkey kind of situation remains, where you just say, yes, yes, we involve patients, but then the substance is actually not there. I've been working in the rare disease field, and so I know how important and how crucial the patient involvement is, and I've been hearing the same arguments for the last 15 years. So even though we know what we have to do, somehow we don't manage. And this is probably something I would like to stress, that in Horizon Europe, this is the moment to actually do things, to actually use everything we know already, everything we know it works, it's necessary to really make a difference at the end of the program.
Maybe with respect to the time, a very short answer, because we got one from the audience.
I have a very
It's on.
I have a very short answer, because you've already covered my first point, the one about ensuring that patients have a voice right at the beginning in asking, what do we want the outcome of this research to be? So that's my first point. The second point is, again, just making it all patient-friendly. The wording you use. the environment where you are talking to the patients. It needs to be friendly. If a patient is sitting in a room with everyone else is a professional, it takes a patient with a certain amount of oompa to actually speak up and say, excuse me, how can you organize how can you talk about a prospective trial that has already finished? Prospective means in the future. You know, they don't actually understand the words you are using. That, by the way, is an example from me when I was an early involvement. So just making it patient-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. One last question from you.
I have a question for Monika and Rolf Dieter Trede from Germany. Just to verify that I got it right, that pain is actually specifically listed, or is it just indirectly implied as a mechanism of disease? The reason I'm asking is, everybody understands pain is important, but unfortunately, this often does not lead to action, but rather inaction, because people think, oh, somebody else is doing this. And therefore, in Horizon Europe, in this challenge area that you mentioned, is pain listed, or is it only implied?
So what I quoted is from the strategic planning. The strategic planning, inevitably, it's a very large and broad document that needs to be worded in a way where basically a lot of things, the scope are covered and the scope is very large. The fact that the word pain appears, it's very good. Because if it wouldn't appear, it would be sad, let's say. So, as I say, the strategic planning is a very broad document. We didn't want to disappoint you. It's a 170 pages document. But if you, of course, fear not, you can actually get it. It's now online. You go straight to the health cluster. And you go through the content there. It's only 20 pages. And what I would like to say, it's very important because it also underlies the importance of partnerships and cross-cutting activities. And this is, again, it will be a leitmotif of Horizon Europe.
Thank you very much. And I would like to, you can applause. And continue the applause because I would thank the panel for making yourself available and Frédéric for this session. Thank you all. And while we prepare for the next session, let me say that sharing best practice and education is a key driver to improve the situation. We talked about a little bit already this morning. And before we kick off the session, let me first introduce the expert of this session. He is Executive Director from the European Pain Federation, EFIC. Please welcome Sam Keenman. And Sam, before we really start the short presentations, let's ask you 2 questions. Here is the first one. Here's a quiz question, by the way. What is the percentage of teaching hours in an undergraduate medical degree dedicated to the topic of pain in Europe?
Hello? Sorry. It might be worth, sorry, can I just clarify for a second? It might be worth adding that this is the average. This is not compulsory in every country. This is the average of the responses.
If you want, you can use it. All right. I think we're almost done. And here is the result. That's what you voted. And 0.2% was the right answer. Let's turn to the next question, and maybe you were more lucky in the next for those who didn't vote the right answer. Education on pain prevention and management should be part of public health programs and be provided in the workplace and at school. This is an individual, so make your choice and pass it around. This is an individual question, so. Make your vote and pass the iPad around. All right. Let's see what you gave as a response. You strongly agree that it should be part of public health programs, and unfortunately, pain medicine is not taught as a special subject. Sam, let's kick off the session and call the panelists on the floor.
Okay. So our panelists for this session, we have, first of all, Dr. Emma Briggs. We have Professor Giselle Pickering and Dr. Usman Khan. So this session is on pain education. Since I joined the European Pain Federation in 2017, I've grown to know an awful lot about pain education that I never knew in the past. My background was in advocacy, and I assumed that within EFIC, advocacy would be the vast majority of what I do. But it turns out that education is a huge, huge component, whether that's assisting with examinations, assisting with the development of curricula, understanding the educational pathways of different professionals. And I'm glad to see that it became a component of the joint statement of SIP last year, and that we are going to elaborate on it in the future in terms of our policy recommendations. Though education is a difficult one when it comes to policy, the extent to which government has any kind of influence on medical education is in many ways limited. Definitely not controlled. It's in many ways governed by the professions themselves and by academia. So the way in which we can influence it is quite different to, for example, employment. But we've got some expert speakers today who know a lot about the influence of education either on medical professionals or on patients and society. So we'll start with Dr. Emma Briggs. Emma is an academic nurse from King's College London. Emma is very passionate about interprofessional education and is an expert on pain education, not just in the UK, but across Europe. And for EFIC, Emma Briggs is leading on our new curriculum on pain nursing, which was published recently and which will one day be elaborated into an examination. I'll call up Emma now.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. The next time you visit a healthcare professional, it is likely that they will have had very little education and training around pain management, as you've seen from that statistics around the medical curricula, but actually it's true for some of the other professions within health as well. I have no declarations of interest to declare. So let's have a look at the current situation. So within nursing, within Italy, the pain content has been mapped, and around 42% of their curricula contains pain in relation to the International Association of the Study of Pain curricula, which gives some outline topics to what should be in the curricula. Physiotherapy fares a little bit better at 74 hours within Finland, but the variations are still huge, and they can be between 50 hours and over 21 hours and 103 hours. You've seen the statistic from medical curricula. This is a study that we led with EFIC, and it was 0.2% of the curricula. 5,500 hours medicine has in its curricula, and only 12 hours is designated to pain itself. And it's also about the nature of that teaching as well, and it's often in lectures, and the reality is you will only retain 20 or 30% of things that you see and you hear. So you can take that figure down even further as to the content that people have and what they retain in terms of pain management. We conducted a study a few years ago which actually looked at the detail across the professions, and I wanted to share some of this data with you today. In the graph there, I mapped the professions, and I'm just going to move from the left to the right. So in dentistry, it's only 8 hours of pain education. Within medicine, they got to 13 within the UK, so very, very similar across Europe itself. Midwifery, only 6 hours. Nursing was just over 10. Occupational therapists were getting more pain education than the medics and nurses. Pharmacy was only 8 hours of pain education. And again, physiotherapy have done very well. That's in the blue, the light blue column. And they had a larger number of hours. You've kind of got to disregard the pink, although it's of interest. That is veterinary science. Okay, it's of interest because they do get more pain education than our healthcare professionals, but actually that's only 2 veterinary colleges within the UK, so we've got to think about that with caution. But ultimately, same sort of thing, we only have a few hours in the curriculum and less than 1%. Best practice, it actually needs to be formally recognised into the curriculum. We need our healthcare professionals to master pain. We need them to know about pain management, absolutely, but it is more than knowing, it is more than sitting in a lecture. And actually, they need to have the skills, they need to have the right attitude, and they need to have the competency in pain management. We need to help people do that, and they cannot do that sitting in a lecture of which they're only going to remember 20 to 30% of it. So it needs to be formally recognised within the curriculum. And what we say is actually education needs to be competency-based. So again, moving away just from knowledge and actually looking at people's skills, looking at people, can they assess, can they problem solve, can they decision make around to help people who are experiencing pain. And ultimately, we work together, so we need to learn together. Interprofessional collaboration improves health outcomes, it reduces health costs, and in cancer centres, more collaborative teams have shown to actually have better pain management with their patients. And there's a whole range of skills that we need our students to have in order to work collaboratively. And it's possible to do. These are our students in the photo. We educate 1,300 students each year, dentists, nurses, midwives, physios, pharmacists and midwives, all learning about pain together, all collaborating, all problem solving, all learning about their roles and other professionals' roles in order to help patients and keep the patient at the focus to improve their care. At the specialist level, there is much variation across Europe in terms of roles, in terms of competency, in terms of education that's available. So at EFIC, we have a suite of curricula which lay down the standards. This is what we expect of a specialist who is working at pain. Working in pain. So that again is competency based. It looks at people's skills, their attitudes. It ensures that they have the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes to effectively manage pain. And that currently is available for medicine, for physiotherapy, for psychology and for nursing. So how do we prioritize pain education? We need to strengthen our voice, and we do that by working together in platforms such as this. We need strategic partnerships at a national and at a European level, and to get patient groups and patient organisations together, to get non-pain specialist organisations together, our orthopaedic colleagues, our rheumatology colleagues. Together, we will have a stronger voice. We need to have advocacy at every possible level. As Sam said, it is very difficult sometimes to actually change things on a European level because the power often rests with academia. Often we have professional regulators who will stipulate what needs to go into the curriculum. So we need to have advocates at those levels to actually ensure that pain education is firmly in the curricula. And then finally, we need to provide standards of practice. We need to say, this is the minimum. This is the competency that I need a nurse to be able to do, that I need a medic needs to be, I need a physio needs to be able to do. We need to be able to ensure that not only is that in the curriculum, that we assess it as well. We make sure, because assessment actually drives learning. And so we need to make sure that that those students, upon graduation, actually have the competency to effectively manage pain. So we need to prioritise pain education because it will help with the prevention of pain. It will help with management of pain. And so that the next time that you pitch up at a health professional's office or at a hospital, that they can adequately treat your pain because they're competent to do so. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Professor Giselle Pickering. Giselle is based at the University of Clermont-Ferrand. I hope I pronounced that correctly. My French is not particularly great. Giselle is chair of the EFIC Research Committee, though here today she is primarily responsible for the national SIP platform in France. And France is not just exceptional in this case because of the very strong SIP platform, but also because in some of the surveys that we've conducted, the research we've done, it seems that there is a strong position of France in terms of the compulsory education on pain for medical doctors. But I'd like to hear a bit more from Giselle about the broader aspects of pain education in SIP France.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to talk about the experience of the SIP platform in France. These are my conflicts of interest. So the societal impact of pain in France, we started with Dr. Aude Alfonsi from Gudenthal 2 years ago. It was quite a challenge because we really started from scratch. And in fact, we tried first to mobilize people around the idea of developing something around the SIP action in France. So we had the full support of the Pain Society first, of course, Grunenthal France, and also we managed to put around the table 11 associations, patients groups, associations of medical practitioners, health practitioners, politicians, and we discussed really the objectives of the project we could set up together. And in fact, we decided to focus on 2 specific areas because, as it was mentioned before, pain is very wide. And in France, we were very interested to look specifically at pain pathways for patients with pain, specifically with patients in cancer pain. And the other aspect was a bit wider on vulnerable patients, including patients, elderly patients, patients with intellectual disability, autism, and also cancer patients who might be vulnerable. So that was the scope of the position paper we started to write. And in fact, the aim was first to realize this position paper. We met quite a number of times, and then we published the position paper. We managed to have a national meeting, a national conference at the Ministry of Health, so we did quite a lot of advocacy work as well. And we disseminated in regional settings. We did that in Lyon and in Bordeaux, and we have another one in December. We've had in Marseille. So we're trying to disseminate now the position paper, and we work all the time with key policymakers. That's very important, and key important people who would help us on the political grounds locally. So the focus of the paper, I'm not going to talk on all the aspects of the paper, but one is very important, that's mobilization. We talked a bit about prevention, protection, but I'm not going to focus on that, but more about mobilization. And when we talk about mobilization, it's really a main focus on education and training. And this education and training is focused specifically in vulnerable patients and in pain pathways, specifically for cancer patients. So these are the main two aspects of the project. So we try to figure out the care networks, the care pathways, the breaking points in the pathways for patients where education could take place and where we could bring something. And now we try to have interactions between the national platform and regional platforms, local platforms, so that we could build up a real wide network in France on education. And we are really supported by the Ministry of Health now, because as Sam mentioned, we have a special curriculum on pain medicine. So we'll have specialists in pain medicine, because so far we did not have that in France, and it was really missing. And it was quite a bit difficult for medical people, nurses, physiotherapists, or doctors really to have jobs in France, really specifically for pain. So it's going to be improving on that aspect. So now for these are just a few photographs of the different steps of our action, and we'll have a poster that's going to be at lunchtime as well. So now what do we want to do? We really want to foster and strengthen the links between the healthcare professionals, the patients, and the public. So that's the next step. That's what we plan to do next year. And to really strengthen that, we need really to work with patients, to provide them with good guidance about pain evaluation, because that's really one of the main themes of our action. So basically, now we want to implement the different strategies we're thinking of, not just nationally. It's going to go via the pain medicine curriculum that we are finishing to set up now in France, and also via conferences, discussions, and patients' involvement in the different tools and the different proposals we're going to make for improving pain care and pain assessment in France. So thanks very much. I just wanted to add just one point in links with the advocacy group at the EFIC level. The research committee under the heading of Bart as a president, with Thomas Stoller and with Andreas Kopf, who's leading the education group, are all willing to participate actively, of course, in the SIP world of to improve pain care in patients. So it's really a collaborative work that we are leading at the level of EFIC. Thank you.
Okay, our third speaker is Dr. Usman Khan, who is the Executive Director of the European Patients Forum. The European Patients Forum, if you're not aware, is the pan-European organisation representing patients' organisations at European level. So I couldn't tell you how many members they have, but it's a very large, very strong organisation. And I have to say it has the ear of the EU institutions, as far as I can tell, over the last few years. And I'll be very happy to hear what the European Patients Forum have to say about education that is targeted at a patient population. And just one last thing, the European Patients Forum is also another interesting organisation in that it's got the acronym EPF, which has caused us no end of problems in that we have to maintain the acronym EFIC, even though we have the name European Pain Federation. But that's just a minor note and something for me to deal with. So Usman, if you can come to the platform.
Many thanks. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. And I have to start with that apology that we've already taken EPF from 13 years ago. I'm very, very happy to be here, and many congratulations to SIP for 10 years of taking forward an issue that I think we all know needs to be right at the heart of health policy and practice. I am very much aware that I am actually the last speaker that's stopping you from what I would imagine now will be a much needed comfort break. So I will keep my words relatively short. As it's been explained, we as the European Patients Forum, we actually represent 74 cross-cutting European patient organisations, which could be the European MS platform, it could be Europadonna, the breast cancer patients organisation, Alzheimer's Europe, it goes on. We basically represent 150 million patients with long-term conditions, and as you can imagine, for those 150 million patients living with their conditions, pain will be a significant factor for some, if not all of them. So what we know is that we're talking about two issues. We're talking about pain and the fact that pain needs to come on to health policy and practice in a way that SIP has been promoting and will continue to promote, but we also understand the need to look from a patient perspective at the issue of pain and more generally at health policy and practice, and also to meaningfully involve the patient voice in that process. It was very nice to see your answers to the question about should patients be more involved in research, and over 50% of you said that you should. I think that is marked and that is important, and I'd note Monica's point when she said 15 years of looking at needing to get the patient involved in research, in policy making, and we're moving from a position where one of my favorite quotes, the quote I heard once, doctor talking to a patient and saying, "My advice is to take my advice." And we know that we're moving away from that, and we're moving away from that paternalistic model, but to be able to do that, we're moving in terms of need. If you look at the medicine's life cycle alone, there are 41 different touch points where the patient voice and the patient perspective can be meaningfully introduced. That is an awful lot of different points. That's an awful lot in terms of expectation and need. And that complexity of the healthcare system that patients are needing to engage in, where pain is one element, and one important element means that education is absolutely key. And it was lovely to hear the presentation in terms of what's being done on the education and training basis for professionals. Then what we need to understand is what's happening on the other side in terms of patient education and training on both advocacy and wider engagement. And here I'm just going to touch upon a couple of initiatives which the European Patients Forum has been engaged with, and I would say we're by no means the only organization involved in this, but the need is really substantial. If we know that we have 150 million patients with long-term conditions, and we know that 1 in 5 Europeans, pain is a significant factor impacting on their lives, then we know that the need to be able to get them to be meaningfully involved in the processes that we're engaged with takes quite a lot of energy and effort. One element we do, UPARTI, it's a program, some of you may be aware of it, both the UPARTI program and also the Paradigm program with IMI support. Very important that we've worked with industry, we've worked with the European Commission on these projects. And UPARTI is there to be able to train patients to be able to be involved in the medicine's life cycle, whether that's in the regulatory process, whether that's in clinical trials, whether that's in other aspects. We've talked about all the aspects, those 41 touch points where the patient needs to be and should be engaged. But they need the training and education and support. When Marion was talking about the resource parts of it, also that confidence issue is incredibly important when you're sitting down next to healthcare professionals who are talking about these issues day in and day out. It's important that both the confidence, the energy, the information, the knowledge is there, so patients are able to access their lived experience. And I have to say, whether it's with pain, whether it's with chronic conditions, the fact that they're able and willing to access and make benefit from that shared experience for the betterment of others, I think is very meaningful. So to use programs like that on one hand, and then on the other hand, we also work, I'll give an example of STIPO, which is our youth advocacy training program, bringing in young patients aged 18 to 30 who quite often diagnosed at a very early stage of their lives when they should be thinking about education, they should be thinking about careers, they should be thinking about partners and their future lives. And quite often they're thinking about pain management. Quite often they're thinking about the fact that they really can't fulfill and can't think about lives in the ways that their peers are. And we undertake training to be able to support them. As I say, the confidence part of it, understanding the health systems, the complexities of the health systems, so they're able to, again, meaningfully engage as advocates, meaningfully engage in other ways. So I think what I'm telling you is that the patient perspective and the patient voice is, we're all accepting that it's incredibly important, incredibly meaningful, but we also need to know that it needs investment, it needs resource, it needs support if it's going to be more than, as it was said, the parsley on the turkey. And we know that that's where we want to get to, so we all need to be able to collectively understand that that is quite a stretch to be able to do it, and we all need to collectively engage in doing it. So I was very pleased to be able to be given just this short spot to be able to say that. If there's anything else that colleagues want to pick up on while I'm here, or further on with the European Patients Forum, we'd very much like to continue the engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Usman. I think as far as the European Pain Federation is concerned, I think there's a great need for us to engage more with European Patients Forum and with the wider patient community in Brussels. We've got a great relationship with Pain Alliance Europe, and I think there's more we can do to maybe inform some of our projects, whether that's education targeted at medical professionals or maybe awareness raising and educational campaigns targeted at patients and the general public to understand what best practices are out there. Michael, shall we have the video first or the Q&A?
We have the video first.
Okay. So we have a MEP, Roberta Metsola from Malta, who sadly couldn't be here today. She's been an MEP since 2013 for the EPP group, and she's been a supporter of SIP since 2016, and a very firm supporter who has spoken at many of our events. And we have a short video from her now.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this year's Societal Impact of Pain Symposium, and well done on 10 years of activities, raising awareness and making so many people's lives better with the work that you all do. The issue of people facing chronic pain is something that I hold close to me, and like many of you here today, a subject that is deeply personal. I am determined to use the platform afforded to me as Member of the European Parliament to address the significant barriers that people facing chronic pain have to climb every single day. In the parliamentary term which has just started, I am committed to take our joint work to the next stage, and can also do this as a part of my function as Member of the Environment and Health Committee in the Parliament. There is a need for a stronger role of the EU in reducing the impact of chronic pain, and I wholeheartedly endorse your joint statement on the need to address issues related to research, education, employment and data gaps that exist on a European level. We can continue to raise awareness of the impact that pain has on our societies, health and economic systems, and we can do that also by exchanging information and sharing best practices across all member states and learning from one another. This is not an issue that is confined to one state or region. We can see the impact everywhere. 150 million people are affected. And the impact is not only on people's everyday lives and quality of life, although that would be more than enough reason to act, but there is an enormous economic benefit to addressing the impact that chronic pain has. We know that it is prevalent amongst nearly 1 in 5 of Europe's population. We also know that in these cases, pain is associated with the loss of independence and the need for more community support, or even to admission to residential care. High-quality medical research is the key to effectively treating pain, and the European Union must prioritise the issue if it is to ensure high quality of life and an active lifestyle. Medical research and innovation are critical to improve common understanding of the triggers, characteristics and symptoms of chronic pain. Chronic pain is one of the main health-related causes of productivity loss, absenteeism and premature retirement. Now, in times where member states discuss the sustainability of their health and social systems, big gains can be made having a systematic approach to the underlying issues. We should furthermore work together with social partners, payers and providers on a European strategy to address chronic pain. There is need to promote outcome-based healthcare, focusing on quality of life and integration in social and economic life, including, yes, the return to work. There is also the need to better integrate health in other policy areas, in particular employment and social affairs. Finally, let me thank all the stakeholders who organised this event today. Thank you for all that you do, and know that you have an ally in me pushing these issues forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we won't keep you too long before the lunch break. Michael, do we start with any questions electronically, or shall I kick it off?
I have, if there is no spontaneous question in the auditorium, I have 2 questions. The first one, maybe we can display. What can SIP do to improve pain education and raise awareness among citizens? It's a macro question. I mean, that's, if we can solve this question, I think, maybe who wants to give a pretty short answer because of time?
I think maybe Emma would be best placed to start with this one as a member of the Education Committee of EFIC.
I'd say so.
Thank you. I think the question that we started this session with as to where we start our education around pain is a really important one. And given that many of our children and our adolescents experience long-term pain, we really do need to start at a younger age thinking about how we integrate pain prevention and pain treatment education at that level. So campaigning and thinking about getting it into school curriculum would be a really important start to educating our community, starting right at the beginning.
That you would like to add?
If I can just add something.
Sure.
You talk about children and I talk about the elderly. And I think for the elderly, I think that's education of the caregivers very often, because a lot of caregivers don't know what to do to evaluate pain in their family, in fact. So that's the other aspect as well. I think to be able to train people to recognize pain, to assess pain, and to just observe the patients as well. Yeah.
So maybe a good segue, and it's a nice post which I would like to show right now. It says, can we display that? Anyways, yeah, here. Europe should establish a minimum of hours at medical faculties dedicated to pain study. And I think there's nothing else we can add, or that's, I think, the minimum.
I think a minimum would be a very good start. It's very difficult to establish what that minimum is, and actually it is about the nature of that, education as well, because 12 hours of lectures means very little in terms of retention of knowledge and
sustainability.
And sustainability, yeah. We actually need to minimum standards more around competency. What skills do we want? And then we can empower universities and support universities and professional bodies to actually ensure that our medical faculties then have the flexibility to decide how they meet those minimum standards.
Thank you very much for this comment. Sam.
I had a question actually. When we're looking at the influence that we'd like to have on healthcare education, medical education, and I said earlier that it's a little bit more difficult than other policy areas because of the way in which it's regulated or influenced. With SIP, in the past few years, we've done many meetings with the European Commission, we've done meetings with national representatives, meetings with regulators. But when it comes to education, there's only so much you can do in Brussels. And I'm wondering whether Giselle and Emma have any recommendations about how we try and influence national programs. You talked about certain regulators that exist. In some cases, you might have to go directly to universities. What have you found out in France and the UK about what works in terms of increasing the amount of hours, increasing the standard of education?
Well, about France, I mean,
yes,
in France it was a bit difficult because we had there was 0 hour on pain education and pain teaching in the medical faculty, and now we've got almost 30 hours, which is a lot compared to what was before. So how we managed to do that, in fact, in the universities, we got involved in the boards, and so that meant, I know Bart is the same in Belgium. I mean, that means a lot of hours spending in boards to try to convince that pain should be taught to students. And it works in the end. And we also got this special, as mentioned, this specialized degree. When the doctors have finished, they have this specialized degree. We are still a bit poor on nurses and physiotherapists and other healthcare professionals, but it's coming. And what we've introduced as well for education, which is very important, is to allow patients to come to the university and present themselves and explain to the students what's fibromyalgia, how I suffer, and so on. And I think that was a big point, because a lot of students, they go to the ward every day, and sometimes they finish their degree, and they have never seen a fibromyalgia patient in hospital. So that's just an example. So that's the way, but I think it's put pressure on the Ministry of Health, so that means a bit of political action, and on the other hand, be as well aware of what patients need, in fact, so that we can be the voice of the patients in front of the students.
Thank you very much.
Thank
This is a nice approach to meet the patients early.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. In the UK, the arrangements are slightly different, and the regulators.
Can you take the microphone a little closer?
Sorry.
Yeah.
The regulators in the UK are actually responsible for setting the standards around education, and then universities then take that and design each individual course. So as many universities are there in the UK are different models that exist. So really we start with the regulators whenever they update their standards. We have a campaign and some advocacy both with patients and professionals to change the standards to ensure that they are written down and so that universities will implement it. But even then there's variation. So we work with individual universities And really it's about having a champion on the ground to make sure that it's in the curriculum.
Maybe one question
One
for,
last question.
for Usman as well. I've noticed in the past few months, maybe this has been going around for a lot longer, but the idea of patient education is not universally accepted. It's not a phrase that is well liked. What is it that maybe organizations like EFIC are not understanding about this, and how better should we phrase our, well, not just our terms, but how should we organize our projects if we're trying to influence the health literacy, let's say, of patients?
It's a good question, Sam, and I don't think there's an easy answer to it, because you know, what I didn't say on either of those training programs I was talking about is that they're running over months. I mean, in terms of calculating the number of hours, you're talking, you know, easily 100 hours that you can do to learn to be able to take what you have as lived experience and to be able to translate that into a meaningful contribution into quite a complicated health and care process. So I think really I just say, making that point that it's not just a matter of just saying, oh right, we can, I don't want to open it, but we can grab a patient. You can't do that for a whole host of reasons. And we need to be careful, and we need to support it, and we need to be able to resource it. So I think making that main message is the key part of it.
Thank you very much. For the sake of time, I'd say, and lunch is waiting just a few seconds away from now. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you, Sam, for your help and your co-moderation. And I have two important messages. During lunchtime, you can have guided tours at the posters. There's the green area, the blue area, and the red area. And you have the color code on the rear side of your badge. That's the thing. Please find your, what is a guide close to the posters, and then they guide you through the posters. And the other thing is, Bart says we should move. Move to the stage. On the stage, we would like to have a group picture of all of you right now. And then lunch is coming. And in front of the stage, we won't fit all on the stage, just come on stage and in front of the stage and next to the stage, and we do it with a wide angle just to have a group picture of the SIP family.